Alright, I saved the heavy hitters for last. These last three, I think if you had to pin it down, are the most important aspects to film, other than maybe the performances, but I had to give you all something so you'd keep watching. Cinematography is such a dynamic art form, there's so many ways to handle it correctly. It makes it so personable and interesting. Like by watching a cinematographer or a director work, you can see how they feel about the world, you can see how they see the world, you can see what they find important. Because of that, it's so easy to talk about a film's cinematography for long periods of time. It's a strange category too, because you're never quite sure how much of it is the cinematographer and how much of it is the director going into the shooting, and it really depends on the film. That necessary collaboration is what gives each film its uniqueness though, and it keeps the industry fresh. Each of these films exemplify an articulate way of seeing the world. They dare us to be more observant and look at things a little differently. Here are the nominees for achievement in cinematography. Wyatt Garfield, A Different Man. A Different Man is an underrated film in a lot of different categories, but its cinematography in particular is important to consider. I think it was great at developing anxiety being the primary emotion throughout the film. It covers it in many different ways, from downright fear to casual stress to feelings of inadequacy. As the film changes directions, the camera work begins to reflect that, and that ability to be many things over the course of the film is what stands out to me. Ranabir Das, All We Imagine Is Light. Like I said in the review of this movie and many times in the past, this film was excellent at displaying the shift in environment from the city to the coastline. After a little bit of time, the handheld cam at the beginning of the film had really started to grow on me, and this work has only gotten better with consideration. It gave the audience a wonderful contextual push, gently moving us to where the movie wanted to go. It was beautiful, but it also didn't take the spotlight more than it had to. It serves the story the way mature cinematography typically does. Jasper Wolfe, Baby Girl. I feel like this is worth a nomination just for the focus technique it has alone. For those of you who don't know, there's these textual moments in the film when characters get emotionally elevated, the camera begins to move in and out of focus. It's a subtle technique, but to me, extremely difficult to pull off. It requires precise direction and a patient crew, and I thought it was brilliant at incorporating it into the story. I've never seen a technique quite like that in film before, and I hope it gets stolen once or twice before it gets forgotten. Sayambu Muktipuram, Challengers. This is about as good as you could possibly get for dynamic, fast-paced camera work. It was bouncing off the screen with creative movement, inventive concepts, and quirky interruptions that kept the audience engaged and warmed up. It's not like it was one note either, with consistent shifts in style based on where the characters were at. In particular, I think about this scene between Josh O'Connor and Zendaya leaning on a wall and talking. It's such a typical scene, how can you make that look interesting? And yet the camera work puts on an absolute clinic. I've never seen someone do so much with so little movement. Such a classic scene. Greg Fraser, Dune Part 2. When it comes to epic shots, Dune Part 2 has everything that you need. The opening scene where a few grunts fly in the air, how did they make something mundane look so ridiculously cool? For most filmmakers, I implore them to stay in the smaller realm where no idiots can get to you. For Greg Fraser? Please, sir, please never stop making big movies. Even for films I had some issues with, like The Creator, I mean, holy shit, it looked gorgeous. He just gets it, man, and it seems like he's only getting better. Yoshio Kirigawa, Evil Does Not Exist. This is cinematography that focuses so seriously and meticulously on its environment. It allows itself to be bold, taking advantage of long shots and even longer takes to set the scene as it needs to be set. It also makes it so that when a new shot comes into play, it can be truly bold, truly striking. It captures the forest so beautifully. As I said before, there's a scene where the camera is just looking up for trees at minutes at a time, and you get to see the childlike wonder of the forest. You forget to look at things in a way you haven't seen them before because it's just easier to push forward in where you're at. The cinematography is so good here, it reminded me to stop and take a look at my surroundings. Lachlan Milne, Exhibiting Forgiveness. I've complimented everything around the cinematography in this movie, so of course I'm going to appreciate its main visual feat. This is clean cinematography, crisp cinematography. No fat, no wasted shots or anything like that. Its inserts and atmospheric shots are gorgeous, and they seem to create magic out of ordinary places. Jint Zibilotis, Flow. Flow contains some sweeping shots, epic shots, one takes that set up the scene, and close-ups that gave you all the emotion from these animals you ever wanted. Now I know this is an animated movie, so stuff like this is easier to pull off than a live action. But really at the end of the day, what's important is how it serves the story, which the cinematography very much does. It had the opportunity to not break away often, so that fluidity gave it some good cohesion. Also, if I might add, Jin Sibilotis has been in a lot of these different categories that usually filmmakers spurse off to other people, so the fact that he was able to do all of this virtually by himself is just an incredible feat. Eric Yue, I Saw the TV Glow. The camera work in this film chooses to be hypnotic, like its characters, and show the horror of a failure to self-actualize. It had some great slow zoom-ins, but it also knew when to keep the camera still. As the great Kenny Rogers stated, "You gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run." This film seemed to heed his advice, especially in scenes that felt claustrophobic. Helen LeVar, La Chimera. This film is so quietly beautiful. It wasn't a single shot that hit me, but by the totality of the film, I was completely blown away. There's a lot of technical things that cinematographers are supposed to do, but at the end all that matters is that you're able to capture a feeling, and this film contains so much heart, so much soul. It was like the camera wanted Josh O'Connor to succeed in his self-actualization journey, and every decision it made was an omniscient guide trying to push him in the right direction. Kazuto Izumida, Look Back. This is another one of those films, like Flow, where the medium allows it more freedom to move around with the camera. Unlike Flow though, this movie here has a very, very different style of cinematography. It was far more personal, giving a lot of time to each of the girls' faces and seeing their reactions. It's also not slow or stagnant the way I typically enjoy cinematography, but it was still completely beautiful. Jaron Blashchek, Nosferatu. While many people have had criticisms over Egger's emotional apathy from time to time, which is not unfounded, I think on a technical level he's still one of the best in the business. His shot selection here takes great advantage of the money he has, giving sweeping gothic imagery that almost flies across the screen. He has a clear idea of what the genre is, and instead of trying to do something different, he tries to push the same style forward. It's a wonderful love letter to what came before. Sayambu Muktiprum, Queer. Queer was clearly a reimagining of 50s style production through the modern lens, and you could tell that Luca had a pure love of film from that era by the way he approached the cinematography. Certain establishing shots, like one where you start at the side of the building and pan down to the character on the street, were taken right from that era of film. I just love how uniquely visionary it still manages to be though. It utilized slow-mo in a way that works. That's always fun to see. This is probably Guadagnino's most mature camera work to date. Lowell Crawley, The Brutalist. Dark, vivid, covered in soot, this film seems to hit the jackpot at every moment. You can tell a film's gonna have good cinematography when even the basic stuff, like two characters talking next to each other, is handled as if it had never been filmed before. It took advantage of sweeping imagery, it took advantage of small spaces, indoors, outdoors. It was a truly epic and diverse cinematic experience. Benjamin Kraken, The Substance. What a great name. I love cinematography that's just in your face, unapologetic, rammed down your throat. From the first 5 minutes of this film, you can tell you found yourself in a cinematic ride, one that grips onto you and won't let you go. It used strange and awkward shots, diagonal shots, up close, across the room, whatever it takes to get the right material. It was incredibly French. That's not something I can fully understand as a concept, but it feels that way to me. Striking, bold, certainly exciting. It'd be impossible to leave this film off the list. I think it's fair to say over the last 5 years, the 2020s have turned into a real absurdist or surrealist kick. Which is good for me, that's my favorite kind of art. I'll eat that shit up like a pig on Rainn Wilson's farm. It's been wonderful to talk about this stuff because I think I know things and then someone asks me to explain it and I end up looking like Tom Holland in that one Tom Holland clip.
And I understand Spanish to a certain level.
¿Su nombre?
21.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
But there's a beautiful list of films this year with great cinematography that elevates the films they're working in. But this is certainly one of the most difficult categories I've had to choose from. There's so many great options here. The winner for achievement in cinematography this year is... Sayambu Muktipum, Queer. I think it's gotta be queer, and for this award, it mostly comes down to personal preference. I love this style of film, I love the way it's shot. I didn't expect the surrealist style to be so successful here. I feel immense gratitude that I got to see it, and I got to see it with a perfect modern reimagining. Special shout out to Evil Does Not Exist. I thought its cinematography was full of heart and absolutely deserving of a silver turtle. Okay, but that's gonna do it for me. This episode is finally over. I'm tired now. I'm having a hard time speaking in complete sentences. I'm seriously considering, after writing and shooting all of this, that maybe I should start narrowing the categories down, because it seems like I'm just nominating whatever the heck I feel like. And you know, maybe it deserves a little bit more concise ideas. And maybe I can write a little more seriously about each film because of that. But you know, it's too late for that now. We're already in this, and I'm not taking away nominations now. So let me know if you've ever been on a roller coaster, because we're going to go on a ride together. Yeah. Or other rides. If you've been ridden in other ways, that's let me know that too. So I'm going to leave you on that note, and I've got a BLT waiting for me downstairs that I've been thinking about for the last 30 minutes, and so I'm going to eat it now.